share my screen with you here. Can you all see my screen okay?
Yes.
Great. Let's see here. Let's go with that. Okay, so what I'd like to do is just kind of give airports that we meet with just a kind of a quick overview of what Beta Technologies is, and then sort of how the recharging network fits into the overall plan, and then answer any questions and kind of hopefully leave the meeting with a little bit better understanding and then a potential path forward to discuss next steps. So this is the ALIA 250. This is the aircraft that we are currently developing in Burlington, Vermont, and also flying test flights in both Burlington and over Plattsburgh, New York, over the Air Force Base in upstate New York. We have the, by far, most manned hours of any eVTOL, electric vertical takeoff landing vehicle in the world. We fly 2 flights a day, typically about 4 days a week, weather dependent. So the aircraft itself is about the size, so it's got a 50-foot wingspan. It's 35 feet tip to tail, and it weighs 7,000 pounds, fully loaded. And battery technology is improving all the time, but we're working the payload up to 250 nautical miles at about 150 miles an hour. So there's 3 main components to our business. There's the aircraft, which I touched on. I think I'm in edit mode. Let me switch here. I'll just leave it. There we go. And the kind of other 2 legs of the stool are the charging network, which I work on mostly, and I'll be showing you a quick map of that as well, and then training. So in conjunction with developing the aircraft and the charging network, we're also working on what they call airman certification. So it's great to have an aircraft. Obviously, you need somewhere to, in this case, to refuel it, is electric refueling, and then you need someone to fly it. So the airman certification is something that we're working in close contact with the U.S. Air Force on. We've got a contract called Agility Prime going with them, where we're able to tap into their assets to help certify both the aircraft and the pilots. So our goals for 2021 on the charging network are at a minimum 45 locations. In 2022, we're hoping to be adding another 150. And this is our current map. There's probably a couple dots on here that need to be updated, but in Vermont, which is kind of right here, we've got our Burlington headquarters, Plattsburgh, and then all the way down to Bentonville in southwest Arkansas. So we've got a pretty good network. We call this our critical path. And then pretty quickly, we're developing down the East Coast, Mid-Atlantic, and all the way down to Florida. So pretty aggressively developing that. This is what the actual charger looks like. We call it a dispenser. And this is on the ramp in Burlington. The actual hardware consists of a couple components. The power tower here, we're working on a cord management system. So there may be like a real sort of box, if you will. And then our dual power towers in the back here. They're about the size of a refrigerator each. And those can sit typically off, away from the ramp. We typically will have the dispenser right at the edge of the ramp. If we can avoid trenching through concrete, we like to do that. And then the power plant side, just for the convenience of servicing those if they need anything from the utility perspective. It's just logistically a bit easier. And this is just a couple different locations where we have configurations that vary or are going in. York, facility where we've got both charging components, and in the background we have a ESS energy storage system. So it's got a battery backup, which is a little bit more involved. And then let me just jump to my browser. So Columbia County's here, and then this is kind of how you all fit into the network. This is a more updated map. Let me make it a bit bigger. You can see that we have a pretty good amount of activity happening in New England and the Northeast in general. And then our national map, we just hired a couple additional people for our recharging team. These pretty quickly are going to start turning purple on the West Coast, and then some up in the Pacific Northwest as well. So that's kind of the general overview of what we're doing. Let me just jump back. Any questions about that? I know it's a lot of information. I'm happy to pull up some additional slides or fill in any holes you guys have regarding the plan Beta Technologies has.
Kippy.
Yes, I got a question. So are you presenting this? I might have missed it just a little bit. Are you presenting just to have a charging station here at our airport?
Yeah,
Or are you presenting to have a place to put your plane and everything?
So yeah, I apologize if that email wasn't forwarded to you. So the general plan is that Beta, at Beta's expense, is going to install an aircraft charger on the side of the ramp. In the near future, the likelihood of someone parking overnight there is pretty low. It'd be more transient traffic. We've gone at the electric aviation market at a little different angle than some of the, I guess what I'd call maybe flashier eVTOL startups out there, where our main focus has really been logistics, military, and medical, where a lot of other companies have gone from the passenger side first. And we kind of think that that's backwards, just in that when you look at flying packages around versus flying a bunch of people around, both from a deployment of chargers at locations where people are going to be less likely to be concerned about it, it's a lot easier to land than it is, let's say in downtown Manhattan. So in the near term, we envision this charging station supporting a transportation network for logistics and medical, as well as potentially military at some point as well.
And the other question I have, how long does a plane is on the ground before it's fully charged, ready to go again?
Yep, charges in about 50 minutes, depending on what it is. Yep, so
50.
Yep, so some of the balance is, for us from a technological standpoint, is batteries that charge fast, but also managing they call thermal capacity, because you're putting a ton of energy into this battery, it heats up. So you have to kind of balance out a technology where it's not going to heat up too fast, or you're going to potentially have some sort of external cooling to keep it, and also the customer mission, right? It's a different conversation if, let's say, 5-6 years from now, someone wants to have one of these for personal use, maybe store it in a T hangar, and it wouldn't necessarily need the same sort of fast charge capacity that we're talking about in an application with a dispenser that would be for a transient aircraft that's coming and going. But the way that we typically envision this is it's a new metered service. So it's a service that we would bring in. We would own and operate the charger, and then share the revenue from the sale of electricity with the airport.
Nate, this is Art Masson. Is this charger something that is universal for all electric aircraft?
It's a great question.
like car chargers?
Yep. So I had this question too when I started at Beta. So there's a path sort of forming in aviation towards a charging standard. There's not a singular standard now, but this dispenser would support CCS and CHAdeMO, which are by far the two largest, most common plugs, if you will, most commonly used plugs. So this would support not only the majority of electric aircraft, but it's also something where it would support any ground-based electric vehicle. You could pull a Tesla up to it. You could pull a Leaf up to it. You could have an electric tug at the edge of the ramp. They could all charge off of the same thing. And in a scenario where there wasn't, let's just say a less common vehicle came out to it, they could certainly have their own adapter in the vehicle, or they could use our dispenser as it is now, but connecting to do it adapted to their specific vehicle. But the vast majority of electric, same standard we're proposing.
Okay. And when somebody wants to use it, do they have to have an account with you, or can they just use a credit card?
So it's just set up as a credit card now. If you look at the dispenser, the display on there, you just essentially put in a card to charge it, and there is, along with the dispenser itself, 4G connection. So there's a data connection from the dispenser to the cloud. So in the future, there will be what they call a plug to pay. So you recognize, let's say, the tail number on the aircraft, which is connected to a credit card, and then you don't have to go through the hassle of putting your credit card into the system.
Oh, all right. Thank you very much, Nate.
Yep.
Yeah, I've got a question about our power supply. Do you need a particular wattage coming in?
Sure, that's a great question. So we have three-phase power, which is just sort of a higher capacity amount of power. We work with a third-party engineering firm called Black & Veatch that helps us do some of the work with the utility to make sure that they capacity, or they can bring the capacity into the airport. So we sort of think of this as a process, not an event. But we'd like to, if we're going to go through the trouble of putting this hardware into place and doing all this trenching, sort of future-proof it a little bit. So ideally, we'd like a 1.5 megawatt service, which would, without any addition to the utility work, service up to 4 chargers. So we would bring that in. We would have our own meter for it. And then what I would share with you all is a host site agreement that sort of spells out how often we would share revenue. Usually it's on a quarterly basis with the airport. We'd write you a check. And the other component I'd propose may make sense here would be a land side electric vehicle charger. So something in the parking lot to charge electric vehicle, which I'm sure you're seeing more of all the time.
You beat me to it. I was going to answer that.
Let me show you. Let me just jump back onto the screen share for a second.
Hey, it looks like Ron has a question.
Ron, go ahead.
I think you just answered them. I just was clarifying that you were bringing in and maintaining your own electric service.
Yep.
So you get all the bills, and then basically in an agreement, you're paying us for some space to have it there, basically, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that can be structured a couple different ways. Let me just. Can you all see my screen? Let me just pull up. It'd be nice to see an actual site. This is a bad example. I'm trying to find one with an EV charger on it. Give me a moment. Here we go. Can you all see that okay? I'll make it a little bit bigger. So this is a airport in Blacksburg, Virginia, near Virginia Tech. And on the right, can you all see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Kind of in the middle right here, you've got the ALIA, the aircraft, and then the dispenser. And then in this area here, those power towers on the other side of the fence. And then finally here, an electric vehicle charger. And in a perfect world, we like to keep the power towers, the EV charger, and the aircraft charger all within 200 feet sort of the hub, which is the power towers themselves. So obviously it depends on sort of the layout at the airport, but it's certainly possible, and we're definitely willing to entertain the idea of an EV charger on the land side as well.
So this works all off of line-fed electric. There's no solar or anything involved in this?
Now, we do have different configurations for what we call our recharging pad. Let me show you since you're asking. At our headquarters in Vermont, and then on some of our critical path stops, we have a recharging pad, which looks a little bit like this. And you can see on the right-hand side here, we're looking due south, so there aren't panels on this side of it. But on the kind of the top edge of the recharging pad are solar panels. This configuration, where you're going to be landing a 7,000-pound aircraft, is orders of magnitude more expensive than what we're talking about. And it's got energy storage. It's got a pilot kind of lounge rest area. It has a command center, which I guess we don't have.
Is that like a wireless cell phone charger?
What?
The top part that you showed. It almost looked like they just land on there and it charges.
That technology is not something we're going to incorporate in the near future into the aircraft. Part of the reason that we're setting it up the way we are is we do want to have a standardization of the charging. We want it to be something that not only our aircraft can use, but also is going to support other types of electric aviation. So.
Ron, you still have your hand up?
Yes. So my next question was, and I don't know if this is the next step or if you've got an answer to this. Have you worked with our particular airport layout and the operator that's there today to find out if we've got room for such a facility without it interrupting the normal flow of business over there, or is that a next step?
That's a no so far. And my hope meeting is to get the okay to, ideally the process from our perspective, having done this a couple dozen times, we really like to connect with your architect of record, whoever's most familiar with the airport layout plan, and work through them to help us file a 7460 application for alteration on the ramp. And the reason for that is, one, they're most familiar with the site. They can help us, identify existing utilities, any sort of underground hazards that might make us want to pivot from, say, a primary preferred location to a secondary location. And also, just from a low friction perspective, Beta Technologies wants to make this as easy for the airport as possible. And we have found that, and we learned this the hard way, going out to the FAA and filing the 7460 ourselves, depending on the airport district office, ADO, that it ends up in, their mind explodes sometimes. They're like, well, what is this thing and how does it work? And do we need a vertiport? And like, and how are we going to define that? None of that matters. This is just like a self-service fuel farm, on the edge of the ramp somewhere where you're charging, on a credit card for low lead 100 or Jet A. This just happens to pump electrons. So when we go through the architect of record at the airport, we found the process runs smoother for multiple reasons. So we sort of connect the local architect with Black & Veatch, the national contractor who helps us with some of the siting of utilities. And then they actually, local A&E firm files it, and then Black & Veatch, since we work with them a lot, actually executes, right? They help us connect with the utility, figure out if we need to bring in additional power, what that looks like. Do we need to have a transformer here? We're going to trench there. So it's effort as we see it, but again, we want to try to respect your process and do it in a way where it goes smoothly and it's a benefit to everybody.
Well, that sounds good. And we use Passero Associates right now, and there is some ongoing projects out there, and that's why I brought this up. Is I wanted to know how it fit into. We're looking at a new fuel farm. We've talked about renovations to the hangar or to the different buildings that are there today. So
Yep.
I certainly want to bring them into the picture here sooner than later, and I'm glad to hear that you'd like to reach out to them.
Absolutely, yeah. Did you offhand? Did you have a location in mind?
No, I don't. Brian is on the call. He may have an idea, but I would want to work through Passero because they're the ones that have done a lot of long range planning for us. So.
Okay, and Ryan, you could connect me with them.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Well, here's my next big question.
Sure.
Nate, are there other companies involved in this airport electric business?
Not to our knowledge, we are the only company thinking this far ahead, and we obviously really believe that electric aviation is the future for a lot of reasons. We think it's really the inevitable future of many components of.
Well, I asked that because of government bidding process and.
Yes, so there are other large players in the electric aviation space. I think that their tact is a little different than ours, and none of them are doing anything to build out a recharging network. I mean, we see this as the backbone of a usable, commercially viable aircraft is, having a place to charge it, having alternate airports to go to. And we have a criteria that we look at when we're looking at an airport, and we kind of work through a list of different things. Generally speaking, is it on or off airport? Is it public or private use? Is it going to be Beta owned, which is our preference, or would it be privately owned? We've got some kind of tier one large names that we work with, where they may own some of it as well. UPS, FedEx, Amazon, all companies we're working with.
Yeah, we probably should have had the county attorney on this meeting, but I would say we'd have to run this past the county attorney.
Yep.
In terms of potential bidding or
Procurement in general, yeah.
Yeah,
just so you can explain.
Yeah, and from a bidding perspective, to be clear, if I wasn't, this is all our money. We're not asking for any money at all from the county. So that's certainly from a perspective of if the county's going out to spend money to invest their own funds for more electric vehicle technology, charging, etc. I think we see that as a different conversation than us coming to you, whether we're like whatever Signature or Avfuel or someone who says, "Hey, we want to rent space from you. We want to put this infrastructure on the airport. We see this as a service to the airport. It's something that's important to our network. So certainly all questions I'm happy to have with your attorney, but we're not asking for money.
Yeah, that's understood. I just would definitely want to make sure we run it through the county attorney. They understand the whole process and,
Yep.
No cost and all that. But,
Yeah, Nate, how long a contract do you guys normally look for?
Our normal host site agreement is a 10-year agreement, and we're eyes wide open. We know that people aren't going to be flying Aliyahs to the airport next week. It's realistically probably a couple years. We're kind of looking at. I was just on a big meeting about this, but we're kind of looking at sometime in 2022 where we'd have this certified and starting production. So we don't want to be in a position where we have a viable certified aircraft ready to go, but we don't have anywhere to fly it. So we're really pushing forward now to try to get this in place, and we're looking for a 10-year agreement, and then after that, again, probably a conversation with the attorney. How does that work when it's decommissioned? What happens if Beta goes belly up? All questions we're certainly happy.
And are you guys okay with a non-exclusive agreement where if somebody else comes in and wants to do the same thing, that we're okay to do that?
I don't see any reason why not. I certainly could ask the eggheads up the food chain for me what they think about that. But I'm certainly happy to answer that before anyone puts pen to paper.
Okay, and one other question. I've been reading about these flying cars that they're playing with in the Far East. Is that on your radar, and are you expecting a large number of flying vehicles to be part of this process in the next 10 years?
So it's a great question. We certainly have like a war room where we daily are tracking, what's happening in the electric vehicle space, both on the ground and in the air. And we've got a pretty close eye on our competitors. To answer your question directly, I think there's a lot of reasons why electric aviation is going to take off. And the largest one is really economic. When you look at a helicopter, for example, where this particular vehicle, it can take off like a helicopter, it can fly like a plane, it can just fly like a plane. But if you look at these high value endpoints, right, somewhere where you'd fly into that you wouldn't otherwise be able to access aircraft, those types of locations are right now only accessible via helicopter. And there's going to come a time soon when these type of vehicles certified and operating there, but it's going to literally be, depending on the manufacturer, a fifth of the cost. Where a helicopter, which we own a handful of at Beta, depending on what it is, there might be 2 hours of maintenance time for 1 hour of flight time. And when you're looking at something that, say, a traditional fixed-wing aircraft, just say something small, Cessna 172, that engine could go 2,000 hours before an overhaul, where an electric motor, you're looking at around 10,000. So there's really some efficiency gains in multiple places with electric vehicles. So to kind of come full circle and answer your question, yes, I do think that there's going to be more and more players in this space. You're also going to see more technology around autonomous aviation, whether it be small-scale drones, where I know that the FAA is currently working on a process to try to manage autonomous vehicles in controlled airspace. And how do you do that? It's just not realistic to have a controller, giving 400 drones the okay to fly over, Class Charlie, whatever airport. So there's a lot happening kind of across the industry right now, and we see something like this is only becoming more economically viable as battery tech gets better, and as there are just more reasons to have a vehicle in the air that is fueled by electricity.
Thank you.
Sure.
Ron?
I have a
Actually, I
couple
think Sarah's
questions.
first.
Oh,
Sarah's first, I think.
Go
Sarah?
ahead, Sarah.
Yeah. I'm down here at the bottom.
I can see you. Yeah.
2 questions. One about this is all really fascinating.
Sure.
Safety, like, is that you have a big electric battery up there. Is lightning attracted to that?
As someone, so I'm my private pilot now, and like obviously, if anyone here that flies knows that you're going to give any sort of thunderstorm, any TS on the map, a wide berth. It's from a safety perspective, when we're going through all the same airframe certifications that any other aircraft would go through, where they look at crashworthiness, they look at reducing electrostatic conductiveness. You got those little antennas on each aileron and on the tail of the plane. So similar concept. So it's, to answer your question directly, no, a battery isn't inherently going to be a lightning for energy. It also has some different considerations in a crashworthiness scenario, where it's not like a traditional aircraft that lands and jet A goes everywhere and you have a giant fireball. But batteries do take different types of fire suppression to address a worst case scenario.
Yeah, that's true too.
Oh, great. And then you said logistics, military, and medical. What do you mean by logistics? What is
So
that?
like UPS, FedEx, that type of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, and then medical. Our largest medical customer is United Therapeutics. They're a medical technology company. They specialize in rare diseases. One of the big things that they're planning to use this for is to deliver donor lungs from donor to recipient. They've got this crazy technology where they take lungs that would not normally be viable for transplantation and treat them with therapeutics, and then are able to actually transplant them. So for example, someone may stop at the airport to say reposition during an organ delivery mission.
Thanks.
Ron?
I think you're muted, Ron.
You're right. Thank you. I know this is early, but do you have an estimate if we were into this a couple years down the road and you had planes coming and charging, what kind of revenue would the county get out of this facility?
So there's a lot of moving pieces, right? Some of it is how much electricity costs. Some of it's number of charges a day. Some of it's the revenue sharing agreement. And we're estimating, and this is just sort of from one of our pitch deck for investors, somewhere between 7 to 9 transient aircraft flights a day by, say, so let's say 2024, 2025. Depending on how much the electricity costs, you're looking at $200 to $300 per charge ish. And then obviously there's other fees associated with the aircraft being at the airport that are potential other revenue streams, handling fees, parking fees, whatever additional costs that the airport charge an aircraft that's coming through.
We capture quite a bit of money today off of the sales tax of the fuel that's sold there. Is there a sales tax revenue portion to this?
That's a great question, and I don't in particular in New York what that would look like, but but I'm going to find out and follow up with you.
Thank you.
Yep.
I know it's all early, but they're just questions.
These are great questions. I mean, I mean, this is something where no one's really worked like this before. So, it's something that is somewhat state specific as well. So, we're kind of working through that. And then on the other side, there's potential incentives for us to, from the state level, to install these EV chargers, especially on the land side for some sort of reimbursement. But that's on us. We deal with any work associated with that. And we don't expect you guys to get involved in a state incentive to install a, electric car charger in the parking lot. Your question?
Art?
Yeah, Nate, why are you interested in our airport?
It's a link in the chain that's important to us. I mean, it's a high value location in that you're near a number of population centers. There are a lot of logistical structure. Some of our big customers in and around the airport, that would make sense. And then also, just based on current range, we really need to have airports that are ideally anywhere between 90 to 120 nautical miles apart. So this is a great potential location for us.
Okay, good answer. Thank you.
Yep.
So what are our next steps?
Yep. So next step would be, I guess, getting in touch with Passero and Associates. It sounds like we might need to have a updated or an update from the county attorney on any questions they may have. I need to follow up with you on whether the agreement is exclusive or non-exclusive, and then also sales tax revenue. But from your all's perspective, we're happy to take the risk up front to engage the A&E firm, get an agreement in place, make sure that they're getting paid for their initial work, and just get the process moving, as opposed to getting all the okays. If for some reason the county squashes it, that's on us from a cost perspective. But we would rather kind of move it along and get those initial steps moving, so that once we get the okay from both the FAA on the 7460 side and the airport and the county on the municipal side, that we're ready to move forward. So it takes time.
Nate, I have to ask, the 10-year contract,
Sure.
does that, in regards to the revenue sharing, does that have an adjusted rate?
The standard
Or is it just a fixed rate for 10 years?
The standard is a 10% fixed rate, but we've had different modified agreements with airports where there's been some sort of a rental cost associated with, say, having the dispenser on the ramp, or obviously airports have their own arrangements regarding what fees pass directly through to the airport for coming and parking on the ramp for whatever amount of time.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, we certainly have a group of attorneys who, that wouldn't be the dialogue that I'd probably get too far into the weeds on, but we'd sort of connect the players there and make sure that everyone was on the same page, and there's an agreement that everyone felt comfortable with. From Beta's perspective, we're spending, depends on the configuration, obviously, somewhere in the ballpark of $250,000 to $300,000 for the hardware to put this in, plus A&E and site work. So there's a pretty substantial investment up front for us, and a lot of potential reasons from the airport's level, as we see it, to get involved with electric aviation.
Are they quieter?
They're very quiet. Yeah, outside it's about 45 decibels. Inside it's nearly silent. So it's I have not flown in it. I certainly hope to at some point. But obviously I know the test pilots very well, and I talk to them regularly. and they say it's sort of eerie quiet, almost like floating. I mean, obviously, when you have your noise cancellation on, like, you can't think at all. It's just like, 45 decibels is not particularly loud.
Okay, so you have some things to check into.
Yep.
I would ask you to put the county attorney at the top of the list.
Okay. So how do you want to handle that? Do you want me to just reach out to them, or do you want to make a connection and I can sort of connect at our end to say, hey, look, like, here's what we're looking to do. Here's the host site agreement. Let's get on the same page and hopefully move forward.
I'll include the county attorney in. Brian's worked with the county attorney on things before also.
Okay.
So, and then just let them know that you're going to be speaking to them about this, proposal. And
Absolutely.
If you could run us a sample or a draft, host site agreement type thing for them to review.
Yeah.
One from another location. We can work out the nitty gritty of it later, but just so they understand.
I'll send that along right after our call. His contact information, and I think let me look at the invite.
Hey Nate, can you hear me? This is Brian.
How are you?
Hey, how you doing? No, I have that agreement.
Yep,
I can
you do?
forward it along.
Yeah, I thought I forwarded it along. I'm going to double check.
Yes, I have that. I'll send it to the county attorney. My question, where does the FAA stand with this? Do we need to put in a helipad, for this, or is this they just don't have a stance in it yet? Because that might determine where we want to maybe put it on the property, I would think.
Yeah, it's a great question, and this is exactly the reason why we go through the local A&E firm. We're certifying this first as a fixed wing aircraft. So just like any other aircraft, it would, depending on the weather, maybe come in on an instrument approach, it'd land on the runway, and it would taxi directly to the dispenser, to the charger. So no vertiport required, nothing like that. No, we're not asking for any airspace modifications whatsoever.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yep.
So do we want to wait until Nate goes through some of this informational process, and do we want to call another airport committee meeting, or would we want to move it on to Public Works?
You certainly don't have to decide today. I can get my questions back to you pretty quickly. And then maybe from there you can decide what you think is.
So, Mike, I would go and start conversations with them, and then in the future we could have a joint meeting with Nate and Passero and answer some questions on the impact to the airport itself, and then see where we go with it.
Okay.
Sounds interesting, though I think to a lot of us. But
I think the biggest thing that would help me move the process forward with Passero, even if it's an initial site location, would be a lot of what we're doing with the A&E firm is just making sure that our preferred location, and by our I mean the airport and Betas, is one that's going to work. And there's, like I said, moving pieces. There's utility service availability. There's existing utility. There's just some logistical questions around distance again between the aircraft charger, the power towers, and the EV charger. The sooner that I can at least get an initial even thought on that, the better. I mean, I can pull up a map now if anyone has a vote on where this might want to go. I know Brian had some suggestions.
Hello, Nate?
Hey.
Yep.
Question. So have you picked a spot at the airport, or have you looked at the airport to see where you roughly could put your aircraft to come in to be recharged?
We've done some sleuthing, but I'm open to. Can I pull up the airport aerial real quick?
Sure.
All right, let's do that. So, I mean, I think just from a logistical standpoint, something that's going to be, again, ideally not trenching across a huge amount of existing ramp. So say something maybe in this area here along the edge of the parking lot.
Right.
Was what initially had in mind, where we potentially locate the power towers to be a really, really short run, which makes things easier. Power towers, dispenser, and then an EV charger or two somewhere right in this area.
Well, I agree with that because I was saying the same thing at the airport. That's the place you want to charge. You want to put a charger out to charge cars. You got to be where the parking area is, and that's where most of the planes taxi into to get refueled and do everything like that. So,
Yep.
Yeah, hey Nate, that would have to probably go northward on that from where you want it, because that's where the new fuel farm is going.
Fuel farm's going to be kind of where this orange car is.
I believe so. Yeah,
Okay.
somewhere it's going to be close to the old one, but it's going to be down just a little bit further. So probably the further down,
Okay.
or
the
like further north would be better.
Yeah, but this would be fine too. I mean, I think that the part of the thought here is obviously the shorter the walk, the better between the car and the Aaliyah. But I think everything kind of along this line here, north south, makes plenty of sense. So what I can do is put a site diagram together, just like I showed you for Blacksburg, and that's something that with the attorney, Passero and Associates, and everyone on the airport committee as well.
looks good.
We'll work on it.
All right.
All right. Well, I really appreciate your time, everyone, and looking forward to working with you.
Okay, thank you much.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye now.
Very interesting.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nate.
Yeah, he will, as the FBO, he'll be a part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Hey, Art, Brian here.
yeah.
They were contacted, I think, about maybe possibly Schenectady also. They're kind of aware of it. I did ask them if they knew anything about it, so they kind of know what's going on, but they're interested in to see what we decide on too.
Okay, good, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to make sure he starts with, we go through, Rob Fitzsimmons and
Yeah,
we get that all ironed out, because Passaro can take it from there.
good. Well, I've got to drop off. I've got a call coming in at 4, so I will say goodbye and thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Bye, Art.
Yeah, I think that's all we were doing today, so
So we're all set?
I believe we're all set.
Alrighty. Oswaldo, are you all set?